Hi guys, today I have for you a Dragon Soul raid guide for, yes, that's right, the tennis master himself, Warlord Zon'ozz. This will be for the 10-player normal mode version. And without further ado, let's get right into it here. Zon'ozz is a two-phase repeating encounter, which basically means that you'll have one phase and then another phase, and then that back to the first phase and the second phase and the first phase and the second phase and the first phase and the second phase, just like that. It basically, for our 10-man version, we brought one tank, 3 healers, and 6 DPS. Alright, now let's look at some of the abilities that Warlord Zon'ozz uses and the main mechanic basically that will get us through this encounter. Alright, first off we have Focused Anger. Warlord Zon'ozz basically is not a happy camper, and he becomes increasingly hard to deal with for the tank as his attack speed and attack power increases by 10% periodically. And you may be saying, how in the world can we deal with this? Well, I hope you brought your tennis A game, because we're going to find out. And here we're looking at the main mechanic of the fight coming up right here. It's called Void of the Unmaking. Basically, he's going to summon a big purple glowing tennis ball and bounce it back and forth between the melee and the ranged pile, which you will create at the beginning of the fight here. As you can see, our markers set up. You have the range stack in a spot, the melee stack in a spot, and basically at the beginning of the fight, the tank is going to keep the boss facing the ranged, and then eventually, after a few seconds, he's going to create this ball, the Void of the Unmaking, and he'll create it towards the range pile, heading that direction, and then right when he begins to channel the spell, the tank should turn him around, and then the melee flip-flops with the tank and gets around behind Zon'ozz, where he's facing directly now away from the ranged, and this will create the tennis match back and forth with the Void of the Unmaking ball. Now, it's up to your guild how many bounces that they're willing to try and take. We tried out a few different things, and essentially we ended on, for normal mode, we're doing 5 hits. That's ranged, melee, ranged, melee, ranged. And on that 5th hit, which hits back on the range, the melee then splits out of dodge. The ball comes back, and at that point, hopefully if you did everything right, the ball should be heading directly towards the boss. If not, the tank may have to slightly maneuver one way or the other to make sure that Zon'ozz absorbs the ball for the second phase of the encounter to ensue. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here. We do have a few more abilities to go over that Warlord Zon'ozz does during the first phase that we make sure we don't want to get hung up on. Alright, first one of these we're going over is Psychic Drain. Basically, he's going to put a wave of psychic energy out in front of him. It's a 30-degree cone, and it does 120,000 shadow damage, and it also heals him for all based on the damage that he does. So you have to make sure that that when he's doing this, that he's facing away. He should be, if the tank's doing it properly and the melee standing in the proper place, he will be facing away, no harm, no foul. He will just get a little heal off of it based on the damage it did to the tank. Alright, now this mechanic here is another very big mechanic in deciding how you're going to go about this fight, how many bounces you're going to take. Essentially, this is what happens when the ball bounces. It's absorbing a soul. I'm making the air quotes in the air here. But it's going to deal 180,000 shadow damage split between everyone in that area. So you have to make sure that the groups that are stacking up are indeed stacking up very nicely, nice and tight, to make sure that damage is split. Now once the ball does hit someone and it diffuses, it will bounce back in the opposite direction, hopefully towards your other group. But the other thing is that it also inflicts an additional 20% per diffusion. So every time it bounces, it's going to be an extra 20% damage it's going to be doing on the next group that it gets to. Another thing we're going to make sure that doesn't happen is you don't want the ball to touch the outside edges of the arena. There's really no reason for it to. If it does, it's probably going to be a wipe anyway, but yeah, it's going to cause high shadow damage, and it's actually going to push everyone up into the air. So yeah, don't do it. And there was one last thing going on during this phase, and that is disrupting shadows. This is where Warlord Zon'ozz envelops 2 players in shadow, basically disrupting shadow. Basically it inflicts 36,000 shadow damage every 2 seconds, and also it deals 60,000 shadow damage when it's dispelled, and also it has a knockback. So you have to be careful when you're going to dispel it, that you're not dispelling someone and popping them back into the ball, making them hit the ball prematurely and take the damage by themselves, and therefore basically be one-shotted. So a lot of times it's a good idea to have, especially while the ball is active, just to have one designated person dispelling all the disrupting shadows. And this is the moment that we've been waiting for. We've been bouncing the ball back and forth here, dodging all of their abilities and whatnot, and boom! We finally let the ball hit Zon'ozz. And when this happens, he's going to hop to the middle of the room, and he's going to awaken the Maw of Groth, and he'll turn the whole room dark, and it's just going to be a whole ton of shadow damage going out to the entire raid, just constantly going. It's going to be very healing intensive during this part. Save any healer cooldowns you have, also any raid type cooldowns to make the damage less during this situation. But the good part is, for every time that the ball was diffused during phase 1, he's going to take an increased 5% damage and also drop his focused anger stacks. So therefore, when you reset, his focused anger is reset. He's not going to be wailing on the tank as hard as he was towards the end of that phase, and you're hitting him harder. And now we've reset back into part 1, and from here it's just rinse and repeat. Do the same thing. There, the Void of the Unmaking, tank turns the boss around, the melee switches spots with the tank, goes back behind him, and gets ready to bounce the ball back towards the ranged, which have bounced it their way, and so on and so forth. And do this 4 or 5 times, however many times it takes, and you have yourself a boss kill. The Berserk timer is, as I believe, is 6 minutes, I want to say. We have never ran up against it with the guild bouncing it 5 times. But, any wipes that we've had have been to other stupid mistakes, not anything related to the Berserk timer. It seems to be very, very manageable. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you on the flip side.